I got to ask you something.
Sure.
Last night, my son, you were talking about Zsa Zsa Gabor earlier.
Yeah, everybody's talking
my
about
son said, she was on Johnny Carson's show one time. She came there with a cat on her lap, and she said to you, do you want a pet on your desk?
America's most beloved TV host was hiding a devastating secret. Johnny Carson made millions laugh every night, but behind closed doors, he was falling apart. 4 wives, 3 brutal divorces, shocking alcohol binges, a son's tragic death, million-dollar settlements that made headlines. The man who ruled late-night TV couldn't keep a marriage alive to save his life. What was really destroying Johnny Carson's relationships?
Valentine's Day. Remember, before you fall head over heels on love with someone you just met, remember the initials of Valentine's Day.
To understand how complex Carson's love life became, we need to start at the beginning, with his first marriage, to Joan Morrill Walcott, better known as Jody. Their story began in the late 1940s at the University of Nebraska, where both were students trying to figure out their futures. Jody was a member of the Phi Beta Phi sorority and came from a quiet, ordinary American family that valued privacy. Johnny, meanwhile, was already showing signs of the entertainment talent that would make him famous, performing magic tricks and developing the charm that would later captivate millions of viewers. The young couple met during their college years and quickly fell in love. According to wedding announcements from the Lincoln Star newspaper, they married on October 1st, 1949 in North Platte, Nebraska. Johnny was just 24 years old and Jody was 23. The ceremony took place at the Episcopal Church of Our Savior, reflecting the traditional values of post-war America. Jody wore an elegant gown of ice blue satin with a fitted bodice and full skirt, while her sisters served as maid of honor and bridesmaid. At the time of their wedding, Johnny was just beginning his career in broadcasting. After serving in the Navy during World War II, he graduated from the University of Nebraska in 1949 with a degree in radio and speech. His college thesis was titled How to Write Comedy for Radio and consisted of taped skits and jokes from popular radio shows, showing that even then, he was serious about understanding entertainment. In 1950, Carson began his broadcasting career at WOM and WOW TV in Omaha, Nebraska. He landed a morning television program called The Squirrel's Nest, where he showcased the innovative humor that would later make him famous. One memorable routine involved interviewing pigeons on the courthouse roof who would supposedly report on political corruption. To supplement his income, Carson worked as master of ceremonies at local church dinners, often entertaining the same politicians he had spoofed on his show. During these early years, Johnny and Jody started building their family. Their first son, Christopher Carson, was born in November 1950, just over a year after their wedding. Their second son, Kim Arthur Carson, known as Rick, arrived in June 1952. The youngest, Barry William Carson, called Corey, was born in November 1953. For several years, the Carson family appeared to enjoy a stable, normal life. Photographs from the mid-1950s show Johnny and Jody at home with their 3 young sons, presenting the image of a happy American family. However, as Johnny's career gained momentum, the pressures on their marriage began to intensify. In 1951, Carson received a crucial career break through connections that led to him joining CBS-owned Los Angeles television station KNXT. The move to California marked a significant turning point in both Carson's professional life and his marriage to Jody. In 1953, comic Red Skelton asked Carson to join his show as a writer, further establishing Carson in the entertainment industry. As Carson's career continued to rise throughout the 1950s, the strain on his marriage became increasingly apparent. The couple's relationship, which had started as a private affair between 2 college sweethearts, was now being lived under the growing scrutiny that comes with celebrity. Carson later admitted in interviews that fame made it difficult to take his sons anywhere without collecting a trail of people, which bothered him and contributed to his becoming more reclusive about his personal life. According to biographers and multiple sources, the marriage between Johnny and Jody became volatile over time, with both parties committing infidelity. The pressures of Carson's demanding career, combined with his growing fame and the challenges of maintaining a normal family life in the public eye, created significant stress in their relationship. Jody, who had initially embraced a quiet lifestyle focused on family, found it increasingly difficult to adjust to the constant attention and scrutiny that came with being married to a rising television star. The situation became more complex as Carson's career demands intensified. He was working long hours, dealing with the pressures of live television and navigating the entertainment industry's social expectations. Meanwhile, Jody was primarily responsible for raising their 3 young sons and maintaining their household, often feeling like a single parent when Carson was consumed with work obligations. In 1962, Carson achieved a career milestone that would define his legacy when he was chosen to replace Jack Paar as the host of The Tonight Show. This appointment catapulted him to national fame and made him a household name across America. However, this professional triumph coincided with the final breakdown of his marriage to Jody. The timing was not coincidental. The increased demands, pressure, and celebrity status that came with hosting The Tonight Show proved to be the final straw for an already strained relationship. After 14 years of marriage, Johnny and Jody officially divorced in May 1963. The divorce proceedings were handled with discretion, as both parties preferred to keep the details of their separation private. Following their divorce, both Johnny and Jody handled the situation with remarkable maturity. Despite the pain of their failed marriage, they managed to maintain an amicable relationship, especially when it came to co-parenting their 3 sons. Jody made a deliberate choice to step away from the public eye after her divorce from Carson. She chose to maintain a low-profile existence, focusing on rebuilding her life away from the entertainment industry. Sources indicate that she later remarried Donald Buckley, embracing a second chance at love while prioritizing her privacy and independence. For Johnny, the end of his first marriage represented both a personal failure and a learning experience. In a 1967 Playboy interview, he reflected on the divorce and its impact on his sons, saying, "They were far better off if there's an honest, clean divorce, and that his boys didn't seem to be negatively affected by it." The 3 Carson sons would continue to be an important part of Johnny's life, though his relationship with them remained complicated. All 3 boys grew up largely away from the spotlight, which their father deliberately maintained to protect their privacy. Tragically, Rick died in a car accident in 1991 at age 39 while pursuing his passion for photography. Christopher went on to work as a golf instructor and passed away in 2025 at age 74. Corey became a classical guitarist and recording artist, choosing to live largely out of the public eye. In the 2024 biography Carson the Magnificent, Corey reflected on his father's priorities, saying, "Work was easy for him, family was not," and noting how Carson left his kids and family as a consequence to pursue that professional end. The legacy of Johnny Carson's first marriage to Jody Wolcott represents more than just a failed relationship. It illustrates the complex challenges that come with balancing personal happiness and professional ambition. Their story began as a classic American romance between 2 college sweethearts and evolved into a cautionary tale about how fame and career pressures can strain even the most promising relationships. What makes their story particularly significant is how both Johnny and Jody handled the aftermath with dignity and discretion. For Johnny Carson, the end of his first marriage marked the beginning of a pattern that would repeat itself twice more before he finally found lasting love. The lessons learned from his relationship with Jody would influence his subsequent relationships, though it would take him 3 more marriages to truly apply those lessons successfully. Following his divorce from Jody Wolcott in May 1963, Johnny Carson wasted little time in finding love again. Just 3 months later, on August 17, 1963, he married his second wife, Joanne Copeland, beginning another chapter in his complicated journey toward lasting happiness. This second marriage would coincide with the most pivotal period of Carson's career, as he settled into his role as host of The Tonight Show. Joanne Copeland was quite different from Carson's first wife. Born on October 20, 1931 in Los Angeles, she was a striking blonde who had built her own career as a model and flight attendant for Pan American World Airways. Unlike Jody, who preferred a quiet private life, Joanne was more comfortable in the entertainment world. She had co-hosted the game show Video Village and would later host her own syndicated talk show, Joanne Carson's VIPs. According to multiple sources, they first encountered each other in 1960 when Carson was still hosting the daytime game show Who Do You Trust on ABC. Joanne's father had initially introduced them after meeting Carson in a jazz club, thinking they would make a good match. However, Joanne was initially skeptical about dating the television personality as she was building her own career in television and wasn't sure if a relationship with Carson could work. Their first date revealed Carson's unique approach to courtship. As Joanne recounted on CNN's Larry King Live in 2007, Carson had said to her, "You love comedy so much, would you like to come up and see a show that I did?" Joanne's quick-witted response was, "Is this a new way of saying, come up and see my etchings?" She remembered that both she and Johnny were embarrassed by her comment, leading her to quickly apologize and agree to watch his comedy material. Carson courted Joanne by showing her tapes from the Johnny Carson Show, his earlier variety program. As she later told Larry King, this was Carson's way of showing off, much like sometimes boys will do handstands or show off a little bit when they like somebody. These tapes would become significant later, as Joanne would eventually discover them years after Carson's death and release them as a DVD collection in 2007. Their wedding in 1963 came at a crucial moment in Carson's career. He had taken over as host of The Tonight Show in October 1962, replacing Jack Paar, and was still establishing himself in the role that would define his legacy. The timing meant that Joanne would experience firsthand both the benefits and intense pressures that came with being married to America's most famous late-night television host. Initially, the marriage appeared to be a good match. Joanne brought a sophisticated presence to Carson's increasingly high-profile social life, and she understood the entertainment industry in a way that Jody had not. She was comfortable attending industry events and seemed to genuinely support Carson's career ambitions. Joanne recalled encouraging Carson to take the Tonight Show job full-time when he was having doubts. She remembered him saying, "It frightens me to take it because I think I might lose you," to which she replied, "Are you crazy? You couldn't lose me if you tried." However, as Carson's fame grew throughout the 1960s, the pressures on their marriage began to mount. The demands of hosting The Tonight Show were enormous. Carson was working long hours, dealing with constant public scrutiny, and managing the stress of performing live television 5 nights a week. The show's success meant that Carson was becoming one of the most recognizable faces in America. Joanne later described the difficulties of being married to someone at Carson's level of celebrity. She told Larry King that the fans were the hardest part when they went out in public, explaining that the constant attention made it difficult to have a normal life together. The couple found themselves unable to go anywhere without being recognized, which put a strain on their relationship. More troubling were the personal conflicts that developed behind closed doors. According to Joanne's own accounts, she and Carson had big fights and big issues, which she attributed partly to his being a perfectionist. Their arguments could be triggered by seemingly minor things. Joanne revealed that they would fight over the fact I forgot to get half and half. When these conflicts erupted, Carson would blow up and Joanne would respond in kind, leading to dramatic confrontations. She memorably described how she wore out a set of suitcases without leaving the building because she would pack and threaten to leave so frequently during their fights. The situation was complicated by Carson's relationship with alcohol, which multiple sources indicate became problematic during this period. According to the 2024 biography Carson the Magnificent, Joanne described Carson as becoming 2 different people when he drank. The charming television host would transform into someone much more difficult and confrontational. She noted that Carson had a low tolerance for alcohol and that drinking brought out a tremendous anger about women in him. Carson's drinking behavior was reportedly quite troubling. Joanne described incidents where Carson would come home at 3 in the morning and wake her up by ripping the sheets off the bed, saying, "I'm working my ass off and you're sleeping in bed." She explained that Carson would be remorseful the next day, but never changed his behavior, creating a cycle of conflict that wore down their relationship. As the marriage deteriorated, rumors began to circulate about infidelity. The most significant allegation involved Joanne's alleged affair with former New York Giants football player Frank Gifford. This claim was made by Carson's former lawyer Henry Bushkin in his 2013 tell-all book, published well after Carson's death. According to Bushkin's account, Carson discovered evidence of the alleged affair in 1970 and was devastated, reportedly weeping and going on drinking binges with Tonight Show co-host Ed McMahon. However, both Joanne Carson and Frank Gifford denied that any affair took place. When the allegations surfaced years later, Gifford even joked on the Today Show about not remembering having an affair with Joanne. Additionally, Bushkin's credibility had been called into question, as he and Carson had a significant falling out, with Carson suing him for millions of dollars before cutting off all contact. Whether or not the affair allegations were true, the marriage was clearly in serious trouble by the early 1970s. The combination of career pressures, personal conflicts, alcohol problems, and possible infidelity created an unsustainable situation. In 1970, the couple separated and their divorce proceedings began. The divorce process was protracted and became quite public, dragging on for nearly 2 years. When the divorce was finalized in 1972, Joanne received a substantial settlement that reflected Carson's financial success. She was awarded nearly $500,000 equivalent to over $3,700,000 today, plus annual alimony payments of $6,000 per month that would continue until Carson's death in 2005. She also received what was described as a pretty nice little art collection. Despite the difficulties of their marriage and divorce, both Johnny and Joanne handled the aftermath with relative maturity. Unlike some celebrity divorces that become bitter public battles, they managed to maintain dignity throughout the process. Joanne continued to speak positively about Carson's professional accomplishments years after their divorce. Following their split, Joanne Carson returned to her native California and focused on rebuilding her life and career. She became the host of her own syndicated talk show and pursued higher education with remarkable dedication, earning a master's degree in psychology and later a doctorate in nutritional biochemistry and physiology. One of the most significant relationships in Joanne's post-divorce life was her close friendship with writer Truman Capote. Capote had a writing room in her Sunset Boulevard home, and their friendship became one of the most important relationships in both of their lives. Capote actually died at Joanne's home in 1984, and she made arrangements to be interred next to him at Westwood Cemetery in Los Angeles. Joanne later remarried Richard Rever, but that marriage also ended in divorce. She never had children with either of her husbands, focusing instead on her career, education, and friendships. When Johnny Carson died in January 2005, Joanne had been receiving alimony payments from him for over 30 years. Despite the difficulties of their marriage, she continued to speak respectfully about Carson in interviews and seemed to hold no lasting bitterness about their relationship. Joanne Carson died on May 8, 2015 at the age of 83 at her longtime home in Los Angeles. She had been in declining health and was in hospice care at the time of her death. True to her wishes, she was buried next to Truman Capote at Westwood Cemetery. The story of Johnny Carson's second marriage to Joanne Copeland illustrates many of the same themes that would characterize his other relationships: the difficulty of maintaining a normal marriage while living in the intense glare of celebrity, the challenges posed by Carson's perfectionist nature and problems with alcohol, and the way that career success could paradoxically create personal problems. However, it also showed that Carson was capable of attracting intelligent, accomplished women who could match his wit and support his ambitions, even if the relationships ultimately couldn't survive the pressures they faced. For Carson himself, the end of his second marriage represented another learning experience in his ongoing struggle to balance his professional success with personal happiness. The pattern that had emerged from his first marriage, initial promise followed by growing tensions related to his career and personal issues, was repeating itself, suggesting that Carson had not yet figured out how to make love last in the context of his extraordinary fame and demanding career. In the fall of 1971, while Johnny Carson was still going through divorce proceedings with his second wife, Joanne Copeland, fate intervened at the famous 21 Club in New York City. Carson was having dinner with friends, including renowned fashion designer Molly Parnas, when he spotted a stunning 40-year-old former model named Joanna Holland. She had done modeling work for Parnas and happened to pass by their table, waving at the designer. That brief moment would spark Carson's third marriage, and perhaps his most complicated relationship yet. Born Johanna C. Ulrich around 1940 in New York, Joanna came from an Italian family and had already lived a glamorous life before meeting Carson. She had previously been married to Tim Holland, a world-famous backgammon champion, for 6 years, and had a son named Joe during that marriage. After their 1966 divorce, Joanna had established herself as one of New York's highest-paid fashion models, working with prestigious designers including Jeffrey Bean and Donald Brooks. When Carson first saw Joanna at the 21 Club, he was immediately taken by her presence. According to his own recollections, he was flirting like a sophomore that evening. Through Molly Parnas, Carson arranged for Joanna to take his phone call, beginning what would become an intense courtship. Their first date took place in late October 1971 and doubled as Carson's 46th birthday celebration. From that point forward, Carson became completely devoted to winning her over, reportedly calling her every single day at exactly 4:30 p.m. for an entire year. However, their relationship faced immediate challenges when The Tonight Show moved production from New York to Burbank, California in May 1972. Joanna was a die-hard New Yorker who had no desire to leave the city where she had built her successful modeling career. The move represented a major disruption to her world, and she initially resisted. However, Carson was determined not to lose her, and, according to Joanna's later recollections, he made his position clear. "You're coming to California with Tim, and we're going to be married." Eventually, Joanna and her son made the move to California, where Carson purchased a $500,000 zero-cents Bel Air mansion. On September 30, 1972, during The Tonight Show's 10th anniversary party, Carson shocked his friends by announcing that he and Joanna had been secretly married earlier that day in Santa Monica. The news came as a complete surprise to virtually everyone, as the couple had kept their wedding plans completely private. At the time of their marriage, Carson's lawyers had insisted on a prenuptial agreement to protect his substantial assets. However, in a romantic gesture that would later prove costly, Carson deemed the prenup unnecessary for sentimental reasons. When Joanna expressed willingness to sign such an agreement, Carson instructed his lawyers to destroy the document. For several years, the marriage appeared successful. Joanna brought elegance and sophistication to Carson's social life, and friends believed she was good for him. One of the most significant ways she influenced Carson was by convincing him to take frequent trips to Europe. These travels brought Carson immense joy. As European audiences were much less intrusive than American fans, Carson discovered a love for experiencing different cultures and even began learning foreign languages, including Swahili, for trips to Africa. However, as with Carson's previous marriages, serious problems began to emerge. The same issues that had plagued his earlier relationships, his demanding career, problems with alcohol, and personal demons, began taking their toll. Joanna later described what she called Carson's black drunk phase, explaining that during these periods, she was genuinely frightened. "During that black drunk phase, I was scared," she revealed years later. "Sometimes anything could set him off. Those were the scary times. I really tried." Carson himself acknowledged his problematic relationship with alcohol. In a 1979 interview with Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes, he admitted, "I really don't handle alcohol well at all. And when I did drink, rather than a lot of people who become fun-loving, gregarious, and love everybody, I would go just the opposite. And it would happen just like that." The problems became more serious and public when, in February 1982, Carson was arrested for drunk driving on La Cienega Boulevard near Beverly Hills. He pleaded no contest to the charges and received 3 years probation, was fined $603.00, and was required to attend a driver's education alcohol program. His driving privileges were restricted to traveling only to and from work for 90 days. This public embarrassment highlighted the ongoing issues in Carson's personal life and put additional strain on his marriage. Beyond the alcohol problems, Carson's marriage to Joanna was also affected by his continued infidelity. According to sources close to the couple, Carson's wandering eye had not been cured by marriage, and friends noted that there were multiple women in his life. As one mutual friend put it at the time, "I don't think there is another woman, I think there are women. There's a difference. Men go through a period where they have to prove they are still attractive." This pattern of behavior was particularly hurtful to Joanna, who had given up her successful modeling career in New York to move to California and support Carson's career. She had also become stepmother to Carson's 3 sons from his first marriage, though Carson's relationship with his children remained complicated and often distant. By November 1982, the marriage had deteriorated to the point where Joanna suggested they separate. Carson moved out of their Bel Air mansion and into their Malibu beach house, officially ending their cohabitation after more than 10 years of marriage. The separation was reportedly initiated by Joanna due to Carson's continued infidelity. On March 8, 1983, Joanna formally filed for divorce, beginning legal proceedings that would drag on for nearly 2 years. The divorce case became complicated and contentious, involving substantial assets and complex financial arrangements. Finally, in August 1985, the divorce was settled with an 80-page agreement that made Joanna one of the wealthiest divorced women in America at that time. She received $20 million, 0 cents in combined cash and property, equivalent to nearly $60 million, 0 cents in today's money, plus $35,000, 0 cents per month in spousal support for 64 months. Carson's reaction to the expensive divorce settlement was characteristically pragmatic and humorous. Rather than dwelling on the financial loss privately, He frequently used the terms of his divorce as material for comedic jokes on The Tonight Show, turning his personal misfortune into professional material. Following the divorce, Joanna largely disappeared from the public eye, choosing to live quietly and focus on philanthropic activities. She became involved with several charitable organizations, including serving as president of SHARE, an organization dedicated to helping people with mental health issues. She also served on committees for Santa Monica's Rape Treatment Center and Women's Guild Cedars-Sinai. Joanna Holland Carson lived quietly for decades after her divorce, rarely giving interviews or making public appearances. In July 2025, she died at the age of 93, marking the end of a life that had encompassed both glamorous highs and personal challenges. The story of Johnny Carson's third marriage to Joanna Holland represents perhaps the clearest example of how his personal demons consistently undermined his relationships. Despite having partners who genuinely cared for him, Joanna had brought sophistication, intelligence, and genuine affection to their relationship and had been willing to make significant sacrifices. However, Carson's ongoing struggles with alcohol, his inability to remain faithful, and his tendency to prioritize his career over his personal relationships created an unsustainable situation. The pattern from his previous marriages repeated itself once again, suggesting that Carson had not yet learned how to address the underlying problems that kept sabotaging his attempts at lasting love. After 3 failed marriages and costly divorces that had made headlines for years, Johnny Carson was understandably hesitant about taking another chance at love. By the mid-1980s, he had seemingly accepted that his pattern of romantic failure was simply part of who he was. Carson even joked publicly about his matrimonial troubles, once quipping that "my giving advice on marriage is like the captain of the Titanic giving lessons on navigation." However, fate had one more surprise in store for the king of late-night television. In 1985, while walking along a Malibu beach, Carson spotted an attractive woman and struck up a conversation. Her name was Alexis Maas, and she was nothing like the sophisticated models and entertainment industry figures he had previously been drawn to. Born on July 15, 1952 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Alexis came from an ordinary American family and had lived a life far removed from Hollywood's glitz and glamour. At 33 years old, she was 26 years younger than the 61-year-old Carson, but their age difference seemed less important than the genuine connection they quickly formed. Alexis had been working as a stock brokerage employee, managing her own quiet private life without any connections to the entertainment world. Unlike Carson's previous wives, who had all been involved in modeling or television, Alexis represented something completely different: a chance at a normal relationship with someone who wasn't seeking fame or celebrity status. She was intelligent, sophisticated, and pleasant, but as Carson's former attorney Henry Bushkin would later characterize her, she was refreshingly unpretentious. Their relationship developed slowly and steadily over 2 years of dating. Carson was determined that if he married Alexis, it would be his final marriage. He had learned from his previous failures and was committed to making this relationship work. The couple kept their romance largely out of the public eye, with Carson being more protective of their privacy than he had been with previous relationships. June 20th, 1987, Johnny Carson and Alexis Maas were married in a secret ceremony at Carson's Malibu Beach home. The wedding was small and private, officiated by Superior Court Judge William P. Hogeboom, and attended only by close friends and family. Carson's brother Dick served as best man. For Alexis, who was 35 at the time, this was her first marriage, while for the 62-year-old Carson it represented his fourth and what he hoped would be his final attempt at matrimony. Their honeymoon made headlines when reports emerged that they had spent over $6,500,000, 0 cents, during their Mediterranean vacation. The couple traveled extensively, with Carson discovering through Alexis a renewed appreciation for experiencing different cultures and places around the world. What made this marriage different from Carson's previous relationships was the stability and genuine partnership that Alexis brought to his life. She provided unwavering support and companionship without trying to compete with his career or seek her own place in the spotlight. Unlike his previous wives, who had all struggled with the demands and pressures of being married to one of America's most famous television personalities, Alexis seemed to genuinely enjoy their private life together and wasn't interested in the celebrity aspect of being Carson's wife. Alexis proved particularly important during challenging later years. In 1991, tragedy struck when Carson's middle son Rick died in a car accident at age 39 while pursuing nature photography. Carson was devastated by the loss, and Alexis provided crucial emotional support during this difficult period. She helped Carson navigate his grief while also supporting him through the complicated relationships he had with his surviving sons, Christopher and Corey. In 1992, Carson made the decision to retire from The Tonight Show after 30 years as host, ending one of television history's most successful runs. His decision was influenced by his desire to spend more time with Alexis and enjoy a quieter life away from the demanding schedule that had consumed him for decades. The timing of his retirement, just 5 years after marrying Alexis, suggests she may have played a role in helping him realize there was life beyond his career. Retirement suited Carson well, and he and Alexis settled into a peaceful existence in Malibu. They spent their time traveling, with Carson developing interests in astronomy and environmental causes. He became close friends with scientist Carl Sagan, who was a frequent Tonight Show guest. And Carson's fascination with Sagan's work on the cosmos became a shared interest with Alexis. However, Carson's years of heavy smoking eventually caught up with him. In September 2002, he revealed that he had been diagnosed with emphysema, though he denied the condition was terminal. Despite his illness, Alexis remained by his side, providing the care and support he needed as his health gradually declined. On January 23, 2005, Johnny Carson died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles from respiratory failure caused by emphysema. He was 79 years old, and Alexis was with him during his final hours. Having been his devoted companion for nearly 2 decades, their marriage had lasted 18 years, making it not only Carson's longest relationship, but also his most stable and successful. Carson's death marked the end of an era in American entertainment. At the time of his death, Carson's estate was valued at approximately $300 million, 0 cents. The largest portion, $156 million, 0 cents, was left to the Johnny Carson Foundation, which Carson had established in 1981 to support children, education, and health services. This massive bequest made the foundation one of the largest Hollywood charities. The remaining $150 million, 0 cents, was divided between Alexis and Carson's 2 surviving sons, Christopher and Corey. Despite inheriting substantial wealth, Alexis chose to honor Carson's memory by maintaining the same private, dignified lifestyle they had shared together. She made no attempts to capitalize on her celebrity status or seek media attention. Instead, she quietly continued the philanthropic work that had been important to both her and Carson. Following Carson's death, Alexis dedicated herself to supporting various charitable causes, focusing particularly on education, health, and the arts. She made significant donations to the Johnny Carson Foundation, ensuring Carson's charitable legacy would continue to thrive. Her contributions have supported numerous organizations, though she has consistently avoided seeking public recognition for her philanthropic efforts. Since Carson's death, Alexis has maintained the intensely private lifestyle that characterized their marriage. She has rarely given interviews or made public appearances, with her most notable public moment being a brief, silent appearance in the 2012 documentary Johnny Carson, King of Late Night. She has no confirmed social media accounts and continues to avoid the spotlight. Reports suggest that Alexis continues to live comfortably in California. She has never remarried and appears to have found contentment in her role as Carson's widow and in her philanthropic work. Those who know her describe her as gracious and kind, someone who genuinely loved Carson and continues to honor his memory through her actions rather than publicity. The story of Johnny Carson and Alexis Moss represents the ultimate redemption in Carson's long search for lasting love. After 3 marriages that ended in failure, expensive divorces, and personal pain, Carson finally found someone who could accept him completely. Producer George Schlatter summed up the relationship perfectly when he told People magazine in 2005 that the real love of Johnny's life was Alex. What made their relationship work was largely due to Alexis' character and approach to their marriage. She never tried to compete with Carson's career or seek her own spotlight. She genuinely enjoyed their private life together and provided the stability and companionship that Carson had been seeking throughout his adult life. Today, nearly 2 decades after Carson's death, Alexis Moss continues to live quietly, her life serving as a testament to the enduring love she shared with one of America's most beloved entertainers. The love story of Johnny Carson and Alexis Moss proves that it's never too late to find true happiness, and that real love isn't about fame or glamour. It's about finding someone who accepts you completely, and provides the companionship that makes life meaningful.